Welcome to the DG Workshop. Today we're working on a collaborative piece. This hollow form was provided to me by a member of our guild. After considering how to augment this piece, I've decided to turn an ebony top. Hang around and see how it goes. This hollow form is almost completely finished. On the bottom there's no place to grab it with only a couple of millimeters for a foot, and it tapers the wrong way. I'm going to be forced to use a donut chuck, which I've never used before but borrowed from a friend. Adding a piece of foam to the base so that the bowl will sit firmly. Using some double-sided woodworker's tape here to hold the piece of foam. The base had a couple of wobbles, chunks out in the middle, so I turned a slight recess just to get it flat. Now mounting the top, and it holds just with 3 long bolts and a couple of wing nuts here. Not tightening these down all the way. You'll see in a moment that I have to be able to move the bowl around to be able to get it to run true. So bringing the tail stock up here and loosening the bowl so it moves around. And then I'll advance the tail stock, and our goal is to get the bowl to track true. And so I bring the cone in and just lightly touch it, and then I'm holding the cone and rotating the bowl, so forcing it to track to the cone, and then I'm tightening up the bowl a little bit on each wing nut, not to pull it over in any particular direction. It looks pretty good. So I'm going to back the tailstock off just a little bit to create a tiny gap to see if it's tracking. And then I'll use the tool rest and bring it up really close also, rotate it to see if it's changing gap at all. It looks pretty good. Moved it once more to check, putting it square across the face to see if it's running true there also. So using a very thin parting tool here to cut the little recess I need. Not making very much of a change to this bowl, but I did want to make a recess for the lid to fit into. Just working my way down gingerly here. And this was freshly sharpened to make sure I got a clean cut. Checking for the recess. Definitely didn't want to take too much off. Can't put it back on, and I didn't create the piece. Looks like it turned out pretty good. Okay, removing it from our donut chuck here. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, it looks about the right depth. So now taking a piece of ebony here and cutting a near square. And so I'm going to do a little cheat here. So only 2 of the 4 jaws are actually contacting it, and that's more than enough. Now the same problem I had with getting the bowl to run true, I'm going to have with this piece of ebony. So I'm using the same tail stock, and I'm pulling the piece of ebony forward until it rubs cleanly on that disc so that I know it's running true. Marking out the size that I want to turn here. First a pencil line, and then I'm going to come back and set my calipers to that size. And I'm touching only the left edge. And then I'm going to start using the same parting tool and working away here. A little nervous here because I only had 10 millimeters of material to work with, and wasn't sure how fast I was going to go down, so spending a lot of time stopping and measuring here, not wanting to go through or cut too far. Looks like it cut pretty cleanly. And then I picked up a spindle gouge. I wanted to bring back the edge so when I could later take it to the bandsaw, it wasn't going to be thick, and I could continue to cut down and not have any chance of binding with the with the thin parting tool. I've stopped in between and sharpened that parting tool a couple of times. Still getting a little squealing here as I work on it. Making sure I don't hit those outer jaws as I pull back. Getting pretty close, and so doing a test fit here. It's close, not quite. Taking just a little bit more off, sneaking up on it. It's just a little thick on the backside. And just did a little pull cut across that, and then I chamfered the edge. And so that fits on, it goes into the biggest opening. And now I'm going to make the smaller piece so the lid fits all the way in. So I don't want to cut down any further than a couple of millimeters. So this is going to create a shoulder, and we're going to use this shoulder to hold the lid when we flip this over in a minute. So it's that inside hole we're looking at, not the lip. And nibbling away here. Spending a lot of time measuring, making sure I don't go too far. Yeah, that's getting close. Yeah, pretty darn close. Working our way a little bit at a time. Okay, and I think I've got that. Gonna give the bottom a little bit of relief here so it's not just flat. Make a few simple push cuts. And I'm not going to bore you with all the stages of sanding here, but I'm working my way up through some sandpaper and then some sanding pads. And this is an abrasive polish. It breaks down and gets finer as you rub it. And then you use paper towel to take it all off. And once that's done, I'm going to switch over to even a higher grit sanding pad. And I think I eventually get up to an 1800 grit pad here. And that's the dust collector cycling down. Okay, yeah, that looks pretty good. Got one side. Now you can see that lip. I'm going to use that to hold the piece when we have to do the other side. That's fitting in pretty nicely. Some quick work on the bandsaw here to free this up. This blade is starting to get a little old. You can hear it banging. It's got a little bit of probably a little bit of a warp in it. And that disc should work. Change jaws over here using a set of Nova jaws in an adapter for my one-way. I had these from my old lathe, and the tower jaws just were the right size to hold this disc. Got a little bit of concern here because it doesn't seem to be cutting completely symmetrical, and I've got some run out going on. I can't say at this moment I'm particularly pleased, and trying to see if I can work around the problem. Taking a little bit, trying a few different cuts here, but it doesn't seem to be spinning perfectly, and So eventually I abandoned that and went and used a different solution. Went back to the Stronghold chuck that's same size as the one way, and I used only two jaws. And this piece is so small that that allowed me to move the jaws in a little further than when you have four jaws. And that did it. I was able to hold it and get that in there nicely. And here we are remounting it. So that's those jaws are coming in and just grabbing it just on that rim. So it's well supported. No problem here with such a small piece and these just the two jaws. It's almost a perfect circle with this. Made a slight shallow and now I'm just working it rounding over the corner. Number of passes using the spindle gouge is a bit of a scraper here. Working my way around, making sure I don't catch those bottom jaws. It's starting to come together. I was much happier after I switched over to these jaws. They ran totally concentric. I don't think it's the Nova Chuck. I think it's the Nova Chuck with the one-way adapter. I've measured the adapter since, and it seems to be fine. I think it's probably something was going on between where the Nova Chuck mounted on the adapter. Just doing a small scraping cut here with the handle way down, so it's shearing off to make it nice and smooth. Get rid of any tool marks, and I just want to make a bit of a hollow in the top here. A few little push cuts. Yeah, needs a little sanding to clean up, but that looked pretty good. And working my way through the abrasives here again. In between each one, I'm blowing away the dust, making sure there's none of that grit left when I move up to the next level. Changing over to some sanding compound here again, Yorkshire grit. So you rub it on and then you run the lathe at about 300 RPM, and when you're ready to, the grit is broken all the way down, then you move the lathe up to about 500 RPM and you rub it until no more compound comes off. Here I'm pulling the lid out just a little bit, so I'm not mounting it against the jaws anymore. I'm just holding the rim, and I'm doing that so I can get in and work on the edge of it and make sure I can sand right up to the edge of the jaws. And there's those sanding pads again. They're a nice alternative to sandpaper when you're working at the higher grits. And that came out pretty nice. And I'll look at that before I put any finish on it, make sure there's not any extra marks on it. And there's the lid, and we'll have to decide if we're going to work on a handle for that. But at this point, I'm pretty pleased. All it needs is some finish to complete it. Thanks for spending the time joining me today in my workshop and helping me work on this collaborative piece.